Right now, as you're watching this, there is a hidden mechanism operating quietly right inside your home.
Listen closely. It's totally silent to the human ear, but make no mistake about it, there is a literal nuclear reaction happening inside your house at this very second. Just think about that for a second. We're not talking about something happening securely behind the thick concrete walls of a heavily guarded power plant, and it's not tucked away in some top-secret underground government lab either. It's happening out in your hallway. It's happening right there in your bedroom. It's bolted directly to your ceiling. Yep, I'm talking about that totally boring beige plastic circle that you probably haven't even glanced at in months. Your smoke detector. That's right. That little device we only ever seem to notice when its battery starts aggressively chirping at 3 in the morning. It's actually housing a continuous, ongoing nuclear reaction. Now, you might be wondering how this thing actually does its job. Most of us just assume a smoke detector works like a simple mechanical nose, right? Like it just kind of smells the smoke floating in the air. Well, actually, wrong. The way your smoke detector really works is completely terrifying, absolutely brilliant, and relies on a synthetic element so inherently dangerous that it literally owes its existence to the intense physics developed during the Manhattan Project. So, to really wrap our heads around how this microscopic superpower actually works, we've got to travel back in time to the year 1944. Right in the thick of the Manhattan Project, scientists working on the atomic bomb managed to successfully create a brand new, completely man-made element. They called this wild new creation americium. Now, the main thing you've got to understand about americium is that it absolutely does not exist anywhere in the natural world. You can't mine for it, you won't find it hiding in a rock. It's a highly radioactive, purely synthetic element that's exclusively forged in the extreme, volatile belly of a nuclear reactor. And because it's radioactive, it is constantly decaying, essentially spitting out tiny bits of subatomic shrapnel every single second of its existence. And here's the kicker. There is a tiny, microscopic speck of this exact element, americium-241, sitting in practically every single bedroom in America right now. So why? Why on earth would engineers deliberately decide to put a highly radioactive isotope inside our homes, literally directly above where we sleep? Well, the answer is that americium does something utterly incredible to the environment immediately surrounding it. If we were to zoom way, way in, past the cheap plastic casing of your smoke detector, and deep down into its circuitry, you'd find a very small, highly specialized metal chamber. And sitting right at the dead center of this little chamber is our tiny piece of americium. It just sits there, constantly, relentlessly firing out what scientists call alpha particles. Try to picture this in your mind. Imagine thousands upon thousands of microscopic bullets shooting out at unimaginable speeds in every conceivable direction, every single second. Inside that tiny metal chamber, things are getting violent. And as these alpha particles shoot outward, they inevitably slam into the natural oxygen and nitrogen molecules just floating in the air. We're not talking about a gentle bump either. They hit them with so much aggressive, raw force that they physically knock the electrons right off the air molecules. So what's the point of this microscopic demolition derby? This precise process is called ionization. Because those electrons have been forcefully stripped away, the air inside that tiny chamber fundamentally changes. It's no longer just normal, passive, everyday air. It has rapidly transformed into this highly active, chaotic soup of electrically charged particles. The engineers who designed this system were absolute geniuses. They placed two very specific metal plates inside the small chamber. One plate carries a positive charge, and the other one has a negative charge. Now, in normal air, electricity can't just magically flow between two plates with empty space between them. But because the americium has ionized the air, because that air is now absolutely loaded with charged particles, a steady electrical current can actually flow directly through the air itself, moving seamlessly from one plate to the other. It is truly mind-blowing when you sit down and really visualize it. Your seemingly boring everyday smoke detector contains a constant, invisible bridge of electricity, flowing completely unsupported through thin air. And it does this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, never stopping, never resting. The americium generates the charge, the air itself becomes the wire, and the bridge is perfectly formed. But of course, the ultimate question is, what happens when there's an actual fire? Let's say, God forbid, a rogue spark catches on a blanket in your home in the middle of the night. It starts to smolder. Smoke begins to slowly rise up toward the ceiling. Now, we often think of smoke as just this hazy, harmless gas, but it really isn't. Smoke is actually made up of millions of physical, microscopic chunks of unburned carbon and ash. As that heavy, physical smoke drifts up from the fire and reaches your ceiling, it enters those little slotted plastic vents on the outside of your smoke detector. It floats silently right into that tiny, highly engineered ionization chamber. And the very moment it enters, it breaks the bridge. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how high-level physics can literally save your life. See, those smoke particles, even though they look like little specks of dust to us, are actually massive, gigantic physical objects compared to the tiny charged air molecules. When these massive chunks of carbon enter the chamber, they act exactly like giant boulders suddenly rolling out onto a high-speed highway. The tiny charged particles, the ions, that make up our delicate electrical bridge, bump right into these massive smoke boulders and instantly get stuck to them. Because those ions are essentially swallowed up by the heavy smoke particles, the invisible flow of electricity drops off entirely. The highway is blocked, the bridge collapses. And there's a highly sensitive microchip inside the detector that's constantly monitoring that exact electrical current. That microchip senses this sudden drastic drop in electricity. It instantly registers that the bridge is broken. And within mere milliseconds of that electrical current dropping, the microchip triggers the alarm. A piercing 85 decibel siren erupts. It completely shatters the silence of the night, wakes you up from a dead sleep, and gives you those precious critical seconds you need to escape. It literally senses an invisible change in the air and screams to save your life.
When you put all these pieces together, you realize that this mundane, everyday device is nothing short of an absolute masterpiece of engineering. You are literally being protected by a microscopic nuclear generator. It's shooting subatomic bullets, creating an invisible bridge of raw electricity, all meticulously designed just to detect a few floating microscopic pieces of ash in the middle of the night. Now, hearing all of this, a very natural, pressing question is probably bubbling up in your mind right about now. You might be wondering, am I being exposed to dangerous radiation right now, just by standing in my own living room? And hey, it's a totally fair question, considering we're talking about a synthetic element born from the Manhattan Project. But the answer is a definitive no. While alpha particles are incredibly aggressive on a microscopic scale, they are shockingly weak when it comes to penetrating physical objects. That radiation simply doesn't have the driving force to push through solid matter. In fact, an alpha particle cannot even travel through a single thin piece of standard notebook paper, let alone push through the hardened plastic casing of your smoke detector. The americium is completely 100% harmless, just so long as it stays safely tucked inside the device. So it kind of goes without saying, don't try to dismantle and eat your smoke detector, and you're going to be perfectly fine.